All right. You know what? Let's do the third volume of Paradise Lost. I think that's appropriate. Because it's all about what lies beneath, right? Um, what kind of roller coaster ride that we go on, and innocence is, as I did that little hook, right? Requiem for Innocence. This song is forgiveness. Uh, and what I mean by that is that, well, it's not just forgiveness to other people, but to myself, for, always trying to see the best in other people, irregardless of what they've done and who they are. Because, I've been around gang members, murderers, rapists, even, and drug addicts, thieves, and pimps, right? And prostitutes, sex workers, whatever they want to call themselves. I've been an unwilling participant in human trafficking, as part of the gig economy, the temp contract work, because that's what it is, right? When the cost of living is when you're running at a deficit, that's criminal. And when the government acts in a criminal manner, right, via negligence or incompetence, then the only response by any citizen is to become ungovernable. And since I come from Irish heritage and Scottish heritage, this is part of who we are. The independence and tough and durable nature of my people is unignorable. So when it comes to persecution and prosecution of these people in an attempt to eliminate Canadian heritage, obviously I'm not going to be very happy about it. That's just the end of it, right? Like, my cousin, as I was just talking about Billy, I left a piece of him. Well, my sister and I, we left a piece of him, on the rock here. Okay. He went back to the Atlantic Ocean. So this is my ticket from the way home, right? And again, one of the other reasons for doing the wave painting, it has a multitude of reasons, because I'm not the only one that loves women, right? Thinking about it retrospectively, and judgment in time catches up with all of us. Eventually, justice becomes the reality, right? Retribution, because if you don't seek revenge, the meek shall inherit the earth, right? When you become the devil's advocate, you defend him, then you are just as dirty as the devil, so to speak. That's one of the things in this here. And I'm looking at book 3, which is the invocation, the council in heaven, and the conclusion of Satan's journey. So let's see. And the only way to know, right? And this goes to book 4. And book 4 is Satan's entry into paradise. Adam and Eve in their bower, right? I'm not going to do book 4. I'm going to save that for probably the fourth volume, because each of them having their own theme. Let's see, going in this further. Book 5, book 8, book 9, book 10. You see how much effort that John Milton put into this, in how you have to go through hell to know what heaven is like. That's the gist of it. You're not supposed to, when you read this text, Paradise Lost, you're not supposed to stop. It's supposed to be hard, right? This is a fever dream. Imagine this is the summary of a man's life, right? All he had to do was write Paradise Lost. That was it. I don't know how many volumes I'm going to do of the history of propaganda. I don't know, I could be doing this for the rest of my life as a side, and, eventually I deserve recognition. Not that I'm doing it for recognition, but I also deserve to be compensated for my intellectual property and also my intellect and my humanity. Because if you don't pay the artist, right, then you're a criminal. Usury 101. Like that's the basics of it. If you don't treat people fairly, then eventually the mountain, of karma, of negative karma, so to speak, comes back down on you, right? You try to undermine, and all of a sudden the gold mine collapses on top of you because you used and you abused and you misallocated. You tried to persecute, prosecute, whatever, all of these different efforts in order to eliminate or malign or ostracize a portion of society or of history for the purpose of erasure and the establishment of a new culture, right? Through demoralization, via extraordinary warfare, right? The economic, culture, social, sexual, information, all these different means of full spectrum electronic warfare on the digital frontier, and this new era, right, which includes globalism and the dark side, the negative sides of both communism and capitalism, right? Even getting into monarchy and other systems of hierarchy, because that's what this is talking about. This is humanity in a nutshell, so to speak, right? That's the heart of the matter, and the people on the East Coast have a very hard life in Canada, very hard life. Even some of them having Viking heritage, and you imagine the Viking culture, the Norse culture, and how much the British Isles have in common with them, and we're all one big happy family at one point or another. But from my perspective and observation of through the anthropology and the history, is that of course we have 5 distinct human families, right? Like how apes, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorillas, right? And then monkeys, right? There's a diversification here. We're not all exactly the same. That's just not logical, and it doesn't follow the pattern of the development that is other animal groups, from the tree of life, or tree sprouting up from the ground, right? From our primordial ooze of single cell organisms and mushrooms, right? And obviously John Milton had his vision about this, so it is to give him tribute. And as I've said in other videos, right, creativity and intelligence is a threat to people that are not creative and are not intelligent, because they cannot conceive nor imagine the depths of feeling and the description of someone's very being and their human condition. So I'm going to have a drink of water and then we'll get into this. Hail, holy light, offspring of heaven, firstborn, or the ethereal, co-eternal being. May I express the unblamed? Since God is light, and never but in unapproached light, dwelt from eternity, dwelt then in thee, bright effluence of bright essence increate, or hearest thou rather pure ethereal stream, whose fountain who shall tell? Before the sun, before the heavens thou wert, and at the voice of God, as with the mantle didst invest, the rising world of waters dark and deep, one from the void and formless infinite. Thee I revisit now with bolder wing, escape the Stygian pool, through long detained in that obscure sojourn, while in my flight, through utter and through middle darkness borne, with other notes than to Orphean lyre. I sung of chaos and eternal night, taught by the heavenly muse to venture down, the dark descent and up to reascend. Though hard and rare, thee I revisit safe, and feel thy sovereign vital lamp. But thou revisit none these eyes, and roll in vain to find thy piercing ray, and find no dawn. So thick a drop serene hath quenched their orbs, or dim suffusion veiled. Yet not the more cease I to wander where the muses haunt, clear spring, or shady grove, or sunny hill, smit with the love of sacred song. But chief, the scion and the flowery books beneath, that wash the hallowed feet and warbling flow. Night I visit, nor sometimes forget, those other two equal with me in fate. So were I equaled with them in renown, blind Theramis and blind Maeonides, and Tyrannus and Phoenix prophets old, that feed on thoughts that involuntarily move, harmonious numbers, as the wakeful bird sings darkling, and in shade covert hide, tune her nocturne note. Thus with the year seasons return, but not to me returns day, or the sweet approach of evening or morn, or sight of verbal bloom or summer's rose, or flocks or herds are on human face divine. But cloud instead and ever-during dark surrounds me from the cheerful ways of men, cut off and for the book of knowledge fair, presented with the universe blank, of nature's works to be expunged and raised, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. So much that the celestial light shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate the plant eyes, all midst from terrace, purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight. Now had the Almighty Father from above, from the pure Empyrean, where he sits, high throne above all height, bent down his eye, his own works and their works at once to view, above him all the sanctities of heaven, stood thick as stars, and from his sight received beatitudes past utterance. On his right, the radiant image of his glory sat, his only Son. On earth his first beheld, our two first parents, yet the only two of mankind, in the happy garden place, reaping immortal fruits of joy and love, uninterrupted joy, unrivaled love, and blissful solitude. He then surveyed hell and the gulf between, and Satan there, coasting the wall of heaven on the side night in the dun air sublime, and ready now to stoop with wearied wings and willing feet on the bare outside of this world that seemed firm land embossed without firmament, uncertain which in ocean or in air. Him God, behold, from his prospect high, wherein past, present, future he beholds. Thus to his only Son foreseeing spake, only begotten Son, seest thou what rage, transport our adversary, whom no bounds prescribed, no bars of hell, nor all the chains heaped on him there, nor all the main abyss, wide interrupt can hold. So bent he seems on desperate revenge, that shall redound upon his own rebellious head, and now, through all restraint broke loose his wings his way, nor far off heaven in the precincts of light, directly towards the new created world, and man their place with purpose to essay, if him by force he can destroy, or worse, by some false guile, pervert or shall pervert, for man hath will hearken to his glozing eyes, flattering eyes is what it means, glozing, and easily transgress the sole command, sole pledge of his obedience, so will fall he and his faithless progeny. Whose fault? Who but his own? Ingrate, he had of me all he could have. I made him just and right, sufficient to have stood, though free to fall. Such I created all the ethereal powers and spirits, both them who stood and them who failed. Freely they stood, not free. What proof could they have given sincere of true allegiance, consistent faith or love, where only what they need must do appeared, not what they would? What praise could they receive? What pleasure I found such obedience paid? When will in reason also is choice, unless in vain, of freedom both despoiled, made passive both, has served necessity, not me. They therefore as right belonged, so were created, nor can justly accuse their maker, or their making, or their fate, as if predisposition overruled their will, disposed by absolute decree, or high foreknowledge they themselves decreed, their own revolt, not I. If I foreknew, foreknowledge had no influence on their faults, which had no less proved certain unforeknown. So without least impulse or shadow of fate, or aught by me immutably foreseen, they trespass authors to themselves in all, both what they judge and what they choose. For so I formed them free, and free they must remain, till they enthrall themselves. I else must change their nature and revoke the high decree, unchangeable, eternal, which ordained their freedom. They themselves ordained their fall. The first sort by their own suggestion fell, self-tempted, self-depraved. Man falls deceived by others first. Man therefore shall fall grace, the other none, in mercy and justice both. Though heaven and earth shall my glory excel, but mercy first and last shall brightest shine. Thus while God spake, ambrosial fragrance filled all heaven, and the blessed spirits elect. Sense of new joy ineffable diffused. Beyond compared, the Son of God was seen most glorious. In him and all his Father shone, substantially expressed, and in his face divine compassion visibly appeared. Love without end, and without measure grace, which utterance thus he to his Father spake. O Father, gracious was that word which closed thy sovereign sentence, that man should find grace, for which both heaven and earth shall high extol thy praises, with the immutable sound of hymns and sacred songs, wherewith thy throne encompassed shall resound the ever blessed. For should man finally be lost, should man, thy creature late so loved, the youngest son, fall circumvented thus by fraud, though joined with his own folly, that far be from thee, Father, who art judge of all things made, and judgest only right. Or shall the adversary thus obtain his eyes and frustrate thine? Shall he fulfill his malice and thy goodness bring to naught? Or proud return through his heavier doom, yet with revenge accomplished, and to hell draw after him the whole race of mankind, by him corrupted? Or wilt thou thyself abolish thy creation and unmake for him what thy glory thus how made? So should thy goodness and thy greatness both be questioned and blasphemed without defense. To whom thy great Creator thus replied, O Son, in whom my soul hath chief delight, Son of my bosom, Son who art alone, my word, my wisdom, and effectual might, all hast thou spoken as my thoughts are, all as my eternal purpose hath decreed. Man shall not quite be lost, but saved who will, yet none of will in him, but grace in me, freely vouchsafed. Once more I will renew his lapsed powers, though forfeit and enthralled by sin to foul exorbitant desires. Upheld by me, yet once more he shall stand on even ground against his mortal foe. By me upheld, that he may know how frail his fallen condition is, and to me owe all his deliverance, and to none but me. Some I have chosen of peculiar grace, elect above the rest. So is my will. The rest shall hear me call, and oft be warned. Their sinful state, and to appease betimes the incessant deity who offers grace, invites, for I will clear their senses dark, what may suffice and soften stony hearts, to pray, repent, and bring obedience due. To prayer, repentance, and obedience due. Though but endeavored with sincere intent, mine ear shall not be slow, mine ear not shut, or mine eye not shut. And I will place within them as a guide my umpire conscious, whom if they will hear, light after light, well used, they shall attain, and to the end persisting safe arrive. This my long sufferance and my day of grace, they who neglect and scorn shall never taste. Excuse me. But hard be hardened, blind be blinded more, that they may stumble on and deeper fall, and none but such from mercy I exclude. But yet all is not done. Man disobeying, disloyal breaks his fealty and sins against the high supremacy of heaven, affecting Godhead and so losing all. To expiate his treason hath not left, but to destruction sacred and devote. He with his whole posterity must die. Die he or justice must, unless for him some other able, as willing, pay the rigid satisfaction, death for death. Say, heavenly powers, where shall we find such love? Which of ye will be mortal to redeem man's mortal crime, and just thou unjust to save? Dwelled in all heaven charity so dear. He asked, but all the heavenly choir stood mute, and silence was in heaven on man's behalf. Patron or incessator none appeared, much less that durst upon his own head draw the deadly forfeiture and ransom set. And now without redemption all mankind must have been lost, adjudging to death and hell, by doom severe, had not the Son of God, excuse me, in whom the fullness dwell of love divine, his dearest meditation thus renewed. Father, thy word is past. Man shall find grace, and shall grace not find means, that finds her way, the speediest of thy winged messengers, to visit all thy creatures and to all come unprevented, unimplored, unsought, happy for man. So come her aid, can you never seek, and once dead in sin and lost, atonement for himself or offering meet, indebted, and undone, hath none to bring. Behold me then, me for him, life for life. I offer, on me let thine anger fall. Account me man. I, for his sake, will leave thy bosom, and this glory next to thee, freely put off, and for him lastly die, well pleased. Unlet me death wreak all his rage. Under his gloomy power I shall not long lie vanquished. Thou hast given me to possess life in myself forever. By thee I live. Though now to death I yield, and I am his due, thou wilt not leave me in the loathsome grave. I skipped a line there. All that of me can die, yet the debt paid. Thou wilt not leave me in the loathsome grave, his prey, nor suffered my unspotted soul forever with corruption there to dwell. But I shall rise victorious and subdue my vanquisher, spoiled of his vaunted spoil. Death his death's wound shall then receive and stoop, and glorious of his mortal sting disarmed. Though the ample air in triumph high shall lead hell captive Margaret, so in spite of hell, and show the power of darkness bound. Thou at the sight, pleased, out of heaven shalt look down and smile, while thee raised I ruin all my foes. Death last, and with his carcass glut the grave, then with the multitude of my redeemed, shall enter heaven lost absent, and return, Father, to see thy face, wherein no cloud of anger shall remain, but peace assured and reconcilement. Wrath shall be no more thenceforth, but in thy presence joy entire. His word here ended, but his meek aspect silent yet spake, and breadth of mortal love to mortal men, above which only shone filial obedience as a sacrifice, glad to be offered. He attended the will of his great Father. Admiration seized all of heaven, but this might mean, and whither tend, wondering, but soon the Almighty thus replied: O thou in heaven and earth the only peace, found out for mankind under wrath, O thou my sole compliance, well that now knowest how dear to me are all my works, nor man the least, though last created, that for him I spare thee from my bosom and right hand to save. But losing thee a while, the whole race lost. Thou therefore whom thou only canst redeem, their nature only to thy nature join, and be thyself man among men on earth, made flesh, when time shall be of virgin seed, by wondrous birth, be thou in Adam's room, the head of all mankind, though Adam's son, or say through Adam's son. As in him perish all men, so in thee, as from a second root shall be restored. As many are as restored without thee none. His crime make guilty all his sons. Thy merit imputed shall absolve them who renounce their own both righteous and unrighteous deeds, and live in thee transplanted, and from thee receive new life. So man, as is most just, shall satisfy for man, be judged and die, and dying raise, and raising with him raise his brethren, ransom with his own dear life. So heavenly love shall outdo hellish hate, giving to die and dying to redeem, so dearly to redeem what hellish hate so easily destroyed, and still destroys, in those who, when they may, accept not grace. Nor shalt thou, by descending to assume man's nature, lessen or degrade thy own, because thou hast, through throned in highest bliss, equal to God, and equally enjoying God-like fruition, quitted all to save a world from utter loss, and hast been found by merit more than bright right Son of God, found worthiest to be so by being good, far more than greater high, because in thee love hath abounded more than glory abounds. Therefore thy humiliation shall exalt with thee thy manhood also in this throne. Here shalt thou sit incarnate, here shall reign both God and man, Son both of God and man, anointed, universal King, all power, I give thee, reign forever, and assume thy merits under thee as head supreme. Thrones, princedoms, powers, dominions I reduce. All knees to thee shall bow, of them that bide in heaven, or earth, or under earth in hell. When thou attended gloriously from heaven, shalt in the sky appear, and from thee send the summoning archangels to proclaim thy dread tribunal, forthwith from all winds, the living and forthwith the sighted dead. Of all past ages the general doom shall hasten, such appeals shall rouse their sleep. Then all thy saints assembled, thou shalt judge, bad men and angels, they arraigned shall sink beneath thy sentence. Hell, her number full, thenceforth shall be forever shut. Meanwhile the world shall burn, and from her ashes spring new heaven and earth, wherein the just shall dwell, and after all their tribulations long, see golden days, fruitful of golden deeds, with joy and love triumphing, and fair truth. Then thy regal scepter shalt lay by, for regal scepter then no more shall need. God shall be all in all, so to be needed. But all ye gods adorn the Son and honor him as me. No sooner had the Almighty ceased, but all the multitude of angels with a shout, loud as from numbers without number, sweet as from blessed voices uttering joy. Heaven rung with jubilee and loud hosannas filled the eternal regions, lowly reverent towards the ethereal throne. They bow, and to the ground with psalm and adoration down they cast their crown in woe with amaranth and gold, a mortal amaranth, a flower of which once in paradise, fast by the tree of life, began to bloom, but soon for man's offense to heaven removed where first it grew, there grows, and flowers aloft shading the fount of life, and where the river of bliss through the midst of heaven roll over Elysian flowers, her amber stream, with these that never fade the Spirit's elect, bind their resplendent locks, in wreath with beams, now in loose garland thick thrown off, the bright pavement that like a sea of jasper shone, empurpled with celestial rose smiled. Then crown again their golden harp they took, harps ever turned, that glittered by their side, like quivers hung, and with preamble sweet of charming symphony they introduce their sacred song, and waken raptures high. No voice exempt, no voice but well could join, melodious part, such concord is in heaven. The Father first they sung omnipotent, immutable, immortal, infinite, eternal King, the author of all being, fountain of life, thyself invisible, amidst the glorious brightness where thou sittst, throne inaccessible, but when thou shadest the full blaze of thy beams, and through a cloud, drawn round about thee like a radiant shrine, dark with the excessive bright thy skirts appear, yet dazzle heaven that brightest seraphim, approach not, but with both wing veil their eyes. Next they sang of all creatures first, or creation first, begotten Son, divine similitude, in whose conspicuous countenance without cloud made visible the Almighty Father shines, whom else no creature can behold. On thee impressed the effulgence of his glory abides, transfused on thee his ample spirit rests. He heaven of heavens and all the powers therein, by thee created, and by thee that threw down the aspiring dominations. Thou, that day, thy Father dreadful thunderous did not spare, not stop the flaming chariot wheels that shook heaven's everlasting frame, while over the next thou drovest of warring angels disarrayed. back from the purest thy powers with loud acclaim, the only extorted Son of the Father might. And not so on man, him thou the malice fallen, Father of mercy and grace, thou didst not doom. So strictly, but much more to pity incline. No sooner did thy dear and only Son perceive the purpose not to doom frail man, so strictly, but much more to pity inclined. He to appease thy wrath and to end the strife of mercy and justice in thy face discerned, regardless of the bliss wherein he sat, second to thee, offered himself to die for man's offense. Excuse me. Oh, unexampled love. Love nowhere to be found less than divine. Hail, Son of God, Savior of men. Thy name shall be the copious matter of my song. Henceforth, and never shall my heart thy praise forget, nor from thy Father's praise disjoin. Thus they in heaven, above the starry sphere, their happy hours in joy and hymning spent. Meanwhile upon the firm, opacious globe of this round world, whose first convex divides the luminous inferior orbs, enclosed from chaos and the inroad of darkness old, Satan alighted walks, a globe far off. It seemed, now seems, a boundless continent, dark, waste, and wild, under the frown of night, starless exposed, and ever-threatening storms of chaos blustering round inclement sky. Save on that side, which from the walls of heaven, thou distant far, some small reflection gains of glimmering air less vexed with tempest loud. Here walked the fiend at large in spacious field, as when a vulture of Immus bred, whose snowy ridge the roving Tartar bounds. Dislodging from the region scarce of prey, to gorge the flesh of lambs, yearning kids, on hills where the flocks are fled, flies towards the springs of Ganges or Hydrocephalus, Indian streams, but in his way lights on the barren plains of Sardinia, where Chinese drive with sails and wind their canny wagons light. So on this windy seas of land, the fiend walked up and down, along bent on his prey, alone, for other creatures in this place, living or lifeless, to be found was none. None yet, but store hereafter from the earth, up hither, like aerial vapors flew, of all things transitory and vain. When sin with vanity had filled the works of men, both all things vain, and all who in vain things, but their fond hopes of glory or lasting fame, or happiness in this or the other life, of who had their reward on earth the fruits of painful superstition and blind zeal, not seeking excuse me, but the praise of men, here finds fit retribution, empty as thy deeds, and the unaccomplished works of nature hand, abortive, monstrous, or unkindly mixed, dissolved on earth, fleet hither and in vain. Till final dissolution wander here, not in the neighboring moon, as some have dreamed, those argent field more like habitants, translated saints, or middle spirits hold, betwixt the angelic and human kind, hither of ill-joined sons and daughters born, first from the ancient world in those giants came, with many a vain exploit, though then renowned, the builders next to Babel on the plain of Sennaar, I don't know how to say that, Sennaar, and still, with a vain design, new Babels, had they with wherewithal would build, Others came single. He who to be deemed a god leaped fondly into eternal flames. Empedocles, and he who to enjoy Plato's Elysium leaped into the sea. Cleombronus, and many more too long, embryos and idiots, Amorites and friars, white, black, and grey, with all their trumpetry. Here pilgrims roam, that straight so far to seek. In Golgotha thought him dead, who lives in heaven. And they who, to be sure of paradise, dying, put on the weeds of Dominic, or in the Franciscan think to pass disguised. They passed the planet 7 and passed the fixed, and that crystalline sphere whose balanced ways the trepidation talked, and that first moved. And now St. Peter at heaven's wicket seems to wait them with his keys, and now at foot of heaven's ascent they lift their feet, where lo, a violent crosswind from either coast blows them transverse 10,000 leagues awry into the devious air. Then might ye see cowls, hoods, and habits, with their wearers tossed and fluttered into rags, then relics, beads, indulgences, dispenses, pardons, bulls, the sport of winds, all these upwhirled aloft, fly over the backside of the world far off, into a limbo large and broad, since called the paradise of fools, to few unknown, long after, now unpeopled and untrod. All this dark globe the fiend found as he passed, as long as he wandered, till at last that gleam of dawning light turned thiner in haste. He traveled steps far distant he descries, ascended by degrees magnificent, up to the wall of heaven a structure high, at top wherever, but far more rich appeared the work as a kingly palace gate, with frontispiece of diamond and gold, embellished thick with sparkling orient gems. The portal shone inimitable on earth, by model or by shading pencil drawn. The stairs were such as wherein Jacob saw angels ascending and descending, bands of guardians bright, when he from Isel fled to Padan Aram in the field of Luz, dreaming by night under the open sky, and walking cried, "This is the gate of heaven." Each stair mysteriously was meant, nor stood there always, but drawn up to heaven sometimes, viewless, and underneath a bright sea flowered, of jasper or of liquid pearl, whereon who after came from earth, sailing arrived, wafted by angels, or flew o'er the lake, wrapped in a chariot drawn by fiery steeds. The stairs were then let down, whether to dare the fiend by easy ascent, or aggravate his sad exclusion from the doors of bliss, direct against which open from beneath, just o'er the blissful seat of paradise, a passage down to the earth, a passage wide, wider by far than that of after times, over Mount Zion, and though they were large, over the promised land to God so dear, by which to visit oft thy happy tribes. On high behests his angels to and fro, passed frequent, and his eyes with choice regard, from Paneas, the fount of Jordan's flood, to Beersheba, where the Holy Land borders on Egypt and the Arabian shore. So wide the opening seemed, where bounds were set. Beersheba, that's what I'm supposed to say. Beersheba. So wide the opening seemed, where bound were set to darkness such as bound the ocean wave. Satan from hence now on the lower stair, that scaled by step of gold to heaven gate, looked down with wonder as a sudden view of all this world at once, as when a scout through the dark and desert ways, with peril gone, all night at last by break of cheerful dawn, obtains the brow of some high climbing hill, which to his eye discovers unaware that godly prospect of some foreign land, first seen, or some renowned metropolis, with glistening spires and pinnacles adorned, which now the rising sun gilds with his beams. Such wonders seized, though after having seen, the spirit maligned, but much more envy seized at sight of all this world beheld so fair. Round he surveys, and well might, where he stood, so high above the circling canopy of night extended shade from eastern point of Libra, sorry, to the fancy star that bears Andromeda far off Atlantic seas. Beyond the horizon, then from pole to pole, he views in breath, and without longer pause, downright into the world's first region throws. His flight precipitant and wins with ease. Through the pure marble air, his oblique way. Amongst innumerable stars that shone, stars distant but hot, but nigh hand seemed other worlds, or other worlds they seemed, or happy isles, like those Hesperian garden famed of old, fortune fields and groves of flowery vales, thrice happy isles, but who dwelt here happy there, he stayed not to inquire. Above them all, the golden sun in splendor likest heaven, allured his eye, thither his course he bends, through the calm firmament, but up or down, by center or eccentric, hard to tell, or longitude, or the great luminary, aloof, the vulgar constellation thick, that from his lordly eye keeps distance due, dispersed light from far, as they move, their starry dance in number that computes days, months, and years towards his all-cheering lamp, turned swift, their various motions or are turned by its magnetic beam that gently warms the universe, and to each inward part with gentile penetration, though unseen, shoots invisible virtue even to the deep, so wondrously was his station bright. So I'm taking from the summary here of Book 3. And if you were paying attention, what it's saying here is that, we worship the sun, right? A lot of cultures worship the sun. And Satan appears disguised in order to get into the gates of heaven as the solar guardian, the archangel Uriel. So pretending to be a youthful spirit. So if we're going to take from that, I would say that rebellion, youthful rebellion without a cause is the devil's work. So energy unharnessed, and without direction, without discipline, leads one to the path of ruin. And you wouldn't know that unless you've been through hell. Now, at this moment, in this time, right, the time of recording, May 9th, 2023, it's a Tuesday. London isn't what it used to be. I'm not what I used to be. Well, London has become something less, as it is with the cycles of people. I am becoming something more. Thanks for sticking around.